My name is Ethan Cole, and there is one road in this country that does not let you leave the same person you were when you entered. I don't mean it changes your mood, I mean it changes something inside you. Everyone who has ever taken Old Briar Road and come back has been quieter, colder, like a part of them stayed behind, or something else came back wearing their skin. I used to think that was just small-town superstition, until the night I drove down that road myself. If you've ever driven somewhere you immediately wished you hadn't, or felt like a place was watching you long after you left it, make sure to like this video and subscribe to ReHaunt, because this story isn't about getting lost, it's about what follows you home when you think you've escaped. Old Briar Road doesn't show up on most maps. If you zoom in far enough, you might see a thin gray line cutting through a stretch of forest in northern Pennsylvania, but there's no name attached to it, no warning, no marker explaining why the trees around it grow too close together, or why the air feels heavier the moment your tires touch the cracked pavement. I grew up 20 minutes from that road. People didn't tell stories about it the way they did haunted houses or abandoned hospitals. No dares, no legends meant to scare kids. It was worse than that. They avoided it. Whenever someone mentioned Old Briar Road in conversation, eyes shifted. Someone always changed the subject. And if you pressed too hard, you'd get the same answer every time. Don't go down there. It brings things back wrong. The first time I heard that phrase, I laughed. I was 17, reckless in the way you can only be when nothing bad has ever really happened to you. I asked what that even meant. My uncle looked at me for a long moment before saying, "People leave whole, they come back missing pieces." That should have been enough to scare me. It wasn't. Years later, after college, after my father died, after I moved back home with more questions than direction, Old Briar Road found its way back into my life. It started with Daniel. Daniel Price was my best friend growing up. Loud, always joking, the kind of guy who filled up a room just by walking into it. He moved out west after high school and swore he'd never come back. Then one winter night, 10 years later, he did. I barely recognized him. He stood in my doorway, thinner, pale, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. He smiled when he saw me, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. It felt practiced, like something he remembered doing, not something he felt. We sat at my kitchen table for hours. He drank coffee he didn't seem to taste and stared at the wall behind me like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Finally, I asked what happened. He hesitated, fingers tightening around the...
"I drove down Old Briar Road," he said. The room went quiet. I told him that was impossible. He laughed softly and shook his head. "I thought it was just a shortcut," he said. "GPS glitched, forest closed in, then things started changing." I asked him what he meant. Daniel looked up at me then, really looked at me, and for a split second I saw pure fear on his face. "Something followed me home," he whispered. 2 weeks later, Daniel disappeared. His car was found parked outside his apartment, keys on the seat, door unlocked, no signs of a struggle, no note, just one thing out of place: Mud on the tires, the same dark, wet soil that coats Old Briar Road. And that was when I realized something terrifying. Daniel wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last.
After Daniel disappeared, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. That's the thing about places like Old Briar Road. They don't announce themselves as dangerous. They wait until you're already connected to them, until the loss feels personal. I went to the police, of course. I told them about Daniel, about the road, about the mud on his tires. They listened politely, nodded in the way people do when they're humoring you, and told me adults are allowed to disappear if they want to. No crime, no evidence, no case. So I did what I'd always done when answers didn't come easily. I started asking questions. The first name that kept coming up was Linda Mercer. She lived 3 houses down from where I grew up. Everyone remembered her because she used to sing, loudly, all the time. In her yard, at the grocery store, walking her dog, she had a voice that carried. Then one summer, she drove down Old Briar Road. No one knew why. She never explained it clearly. She said she missed a turn and ended up somewhere she shouldn't have. When she came back, she stopped singing. Not gradually, completely. People thought she was depressed or embarrassed or just growing older. But the real change was quieter than that. Linda stopped looking people in the eyes. She stopped answering questions directly. When someone asked how she was, she'd pause for a beat too long before responding, like she was searching for the right emotion to wear. I visited her one afternoon under the excuse of checking in. Her house smelled wrong. Not rotten, not dirty, just stale, like air that hadn't moved in years. She sat across from me at her kitchen table, hands folded, posture too straight. I asked her about the road. Her fingers twitched. "I don't talk about that," she said. I asked her why. She stared at the wall behind me, just like Daniel had. "It listens," she whispered, "even when you're not there anymore." That was when I noticed the dirt under her fingernails, dark, wet, fresh. She hadn't been gardening. Another name surfaced after that, then another. A delivery driver who stopped laughing after a wrong turn, a teenager who came back from a joyride and refused to drive again, a hunter who swore the forest went silent the moment his truck touched that road. Every story was different, but the ending was always the same. They came back changed, not violent, not possessed in the way movies like to show, just hollowed out, like something had reached inside them, scooped out a piece, and left space behind. And the worst part? They all described the same feeling. Not fear, recognition, like the road knew them. I started dreaming about it after that. Not dreams where I was driving, dreams where I was standing still, watching headlights disappear between trees that leaned too close together. In the dreams, I wasn't alone. I could feel something beside me, not touching, not breathing, waiting. I woke up every time with the same thought lodged in my chest. It wants me to come. The more I resisted, the louder the pull became. Road signs appeared where I didn't remember them. GPS routes flickered for a second before correcting themselves. Conversations drifted back to Old Briar Road, no matter how hard I tried to steer them away. It felt less like curiosity and more like being called back by something patient, something that already knew I'd answer. And deep down, the part of me that didn't want to admit it understood the truth.
The road doesn't change everyone the same way. Some people come back quiet, some people disappear, and some people are brought back for a reason. I didn't leave my uncle's house right away, not because I felt safe there, because stepping back into the town felt worse. The thing wearing my uncle's face sat across from me in silence, hands folded neatly in its lap. It wasn't restless, it wasn't tense. It looked paused, like a photograph waiting for someone to decide when it was allowed to move again. "You invited it," I said quietly, "whatever this is." It nodded once. "That's what people say." "Isn't it true?" It considered the question, not pretending to think, actually stopping. "We didn't invite it," it said slowly. "We stopped refusing." That sentence didn't fit together in my head, like words arranged in the wrong order. "What does that even mean?" I asked. It glanced down the hallway toward the bedroom door, the door to the room my uncle used to sleep in. "It was already here," it said, "before the smiles, before the faces, before people started staying longer than they meant to." My chest tightened. "How long?" I asked. "Longer than anyone alive remembers." I moved toward the window. The street outside looked peaceful again, empty, clean, normal, too normal. "So what changed?" I asked. It stood, slowly, carefully, as if standing required concentration. "The town got tired of being watched," it said. I turned back to it. Watched by who? By it. The way it said that word made my skin crawl. No fear, no emphasis, just fact. "You're saying something lived here," I said, "and you decided to give it people." "Not people," it corrected gently. "Faces." That word mattered. "Why?" I asked. It leaned forward slightly. "Because it didn't understand us," it said. "It learned by looking. It copied, but it couldn't finish the imitation on its own." "So you helped it," I said. "We supervised," it replied quickly. "That was the rule." "What rule?" "It could wear faces," it said, "but only ones that were offered." The room felt smaller. "Offered how?" I asked. It hesitated. For the first time, the delay wasn't calculated. "Some people volunteered," it said. "Some were tired. Some were lonely. Some wanted to stay without being fully present anymore." "That's not volunteering," I said. "That's surrender." It smiled. "Same thing, eventually." My phone vibrated in my pocket. I nearly dropped it. One bar of signal, a voicemail notification. The message was from my uncle, the real one. My hands shook as I pressed play. "If you're hearing this," his voice whispered, strained and uneven, "then I didn't leave in time." Something scraped faintly in the background. "They don't take you all at once. They practice. They watch. They get better." The bedroom door creaked behind me. "They need permission," he whispered, "and this town gives it to them, over and over, because it's easier than fighting." The message ended. I looked up. The thing wearing my uncle's face was watching me very carefully now. "You weren't supposed to hear that," it said. Its voice was still his. Its expression wasn't. "Where is he?" I demanded. It tilted its head. "In pieces," it replied thoughtfully. "Not physically, conceptually." The bedroom door opened. Inside, the room was wrong. Too clean, too empty. No clothes, no photos, no personal items, like the idea of my uncle had been erased from the space. "You should leave," it said softly, "before you're offered." "Offered to who?" I asked. It smiled wider than before. "To us," it said, "or to the town." That was when it clicked. This wasn't a town being hunted. This was a town that had made a choice. And now that I knew, they were watching to see what face I would wear. I left my uncle's house before dawn, not because I felt brave, because staying felt like agreeing.
The street outside looked exactly the same as it always had. Same houses, same fences, same neatly trimmed lawns. But now I could see the pattern. The stillness wasn't peace, it was restraint. Every house felt occupied by something paying attention. I drove without turning on the radio, without checking my phone. I didn't want noise. Noise felt like an invitation. Old Briar Road sat at the edge of town like it always had. No sign, no warning, just a stretch of cracked pavement slipping into the trees. I stopped at the entrance. The forest was quiet in a way that didn't belong to nature. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to pull back once it reached the tree line. I stayed there longer than I meant to, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself I didn't need answers this badly. Then the headlights behind me came on. A pickup truck rolled up and stopped a few feet back. The driver stepped out. It was Linda Mercer. She looked the same as always, calm, hollow, clean. "You weren't supposed to come alone," she said. My throat went dry. "You knew I'd be here." She nodded. "Everyone who asks too many questions ends up here." "Why?" I asked. She glanced down the road. The fog between the trees shifted, slow and deliberate. "Because this is where it finishes learning you." I laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Learning what?" She looked back at me. For a moment, something old and human flickered in her eyes. "How much you're willing to give up to stay." She walked past me, boots crunching softly on gravel, and stopped at the edge of the road. She didn't cross onto it. "They don't force anyone," she said. "That's the lie people believe to feel better." "Then what do they do?" I asked. "They wait," she replied, "until you're tired, until you want something to end." I thought of my father, of Daniel, of the empty house I'd moved back into, of how heavy everything had felt long before this road entered my life. "What happens if I drive down it?" I asked. She smiled, not kindly. "It will take what you don't defend," she said, "and it will give you back something that fits." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one there is." She stepped back toward her truck. "If you come back quiet," she added, "they'll know you agreed." "And if I don't come back?" I asked. She hesitated. "Then we'll stop remembering you," she said. The truck drove away. I sat there for a long time after that. The road didn't rush me. It didn't pull. It didn't glow or whisper or threaten. It just waited. Eventually, I turned the key. The moment my tires touched the pavement, the air changed. Not temperature, pressure, like my ears popping underwater. The trees leaned in, not physically, intentionally. The further I drove, the less my mirrors reflected. The road behind me blurred, then disappeared entirely. No town, no sky, just forest closing in. I tried the radio, static. I tried my phone, no signal, no time displayed. The road curved sharply ahead, and for a split second, my headlights caught movement between the trees. A figure, tall, wrongly proportioned. It didn't chase the car. It walked parallel to me, just out of reach of the light, matching my speed, learning my shape. I felt something inside me loosen, not fear, relief. That terrified me more than anything else. The road didn't want to kill me, it wanted to finish me. And somewhere deep in my chest, a part of me was starting to understand why so many people came back different. Because different felt easier than whole.
I don't remember turning around. I remember blinking, and suddenly I was back at the edge of Old Briar Road. The forest released me the way lungs release air, slowly, reluctantly. My car sat idling. The sky above was the same dull gray it had been before I entered. No missing time, no flashing warning, no proof anything had happened, except for the feeling in my chest. Something was lighter. That scared me more than if something had been taken violently. I drove home without stopping, without looking at my reflection in the mirror for too long. The town welcomed me back the way it always had. Quiet streets, still houses, watching windows. When I stepped inside my house, I stood in the doorway for a long time, waiting to feel different. I didn't, and that was the problem. The change wasn't loud, it was subtle, like a thought that wasn't mine settling in and pretending it had always lived there. That night, I dreamed of the road again, only this time I wasn't driving. I was standing at the edge, watching someone else come out of the trees. A woman. She was young, early 20s, long dark hair tangled with leaves, clothes torn at the knees. Her eyes were wide with relief when she saw the road open back up. Behind her, something else moved. It didn't follow her out. It stopped at the tree line and watched. I woke up with my heart racing. The next morning, the woman from my dream was on the local news. She'd been missing for 3 days. College student, last seen taking a shortcut through unfamiliar back roads. They showed her smiling for the camera as she hugged her parents, shaken but safe. A miracle story. Except when I looked at her face, my stomach dropped. Her smile was wrong. Not crooked, not forced. Delayed, like her face was remembering how to do it instead of feeling it. That night, Linda Mercer came to my house. She didn't knock. She stood on my porch until I opened the door. "You went down the road," she said. I didn't deny it. "You came back whole," she said, studying me. "That's unusual." "What happens to the others?" I asked. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. "Most people give it small things first," she said. "Memories, feelings, pieces they think they don't need." "And when that's not enough?" I asked. Her eyes hardened. "Then it starts choosing for them." I thought of the girl in the grocery store, of Daniel, of my uncle's empty room. "How many are like her?" I asked. Linda turned toward the window. Outside, the streetlights hummed softly. "Enough that we stopped pretending they were sick," she said. "Enough that we learned how to recognize when someone came back wearing the wrong face." "What do you do with them?" I asked. She met my gaze. "We keep them close," she said. "We watch them. We make sure they don't leave town." "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because if they do," she said quietly, "whatever's inside them learns how to travel." The thought made my skin crawl. "So the road is a filter," I said. "It decides who's useful." Linda nodded once. "And you?" she asked. "What did it take from you?" I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. That was when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt afraid on that road. Only calm, only relief. Linda's expression shifted. "Oh," she said softly, "it hasn't finished with you yet." She stepped back toward the door. "When it calls again," she added, "it won't ask." She left me standing there, heart pounding, mind racing. I looked at my hands. They were steady, too steady. And somewhere deep inside me, something waited, not for permission, for completion. The road called me back 3 nights later, not with signs, not with dreams, with absence. I woke up to silence so complete it felt artificial.
No wind against the windows, no distant cars, no hum from the power lines. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you notice it. I checked my phone. No signal, no time. Outside, the streetlights were on, but they cast no light, just dull halos hanging in the air like they'd forgotten their purpose. That's when I noticed something worse. No one else was awake. I stepped outside. Doors were shut, curtains drawn. Every house looked occupied, but nothing moved behind the glass. It felt like the town was holding its breath or pretending to sleep. I didn't fight it anymore. I got in my car. Briar Road waited exactly where it always had, but this time there was no hesitation in the air, no warning stillness. The trees were already leaning in, opening a path. The moment I crossed onto the pavement, the calm returned. Not relief, acceptance. The forest didn't hide itself anymore. Shapes moved freely now, just beyond the headlights. Tall silhouettes, incomplete imitations, faces that didn't stay the same long enough to recognize. They weren't hostile, they were curious. I drove until the road stopped being a road. The pavement ended abruptly, swallowed by dirt and roots. My car rolled to a gentle stop, like it had been guided. Ahead of me was a clearing I'd never seen before, and in the center of it stood everyone who had ever come back wrong. Daniel, the girl from the grocery store, Linda Mercer, faces I half recognized from childhood, from photographs, from missing persons posters. They stood quietly, arranged in a loose circle, eyes fixed on something behind me. I didn't turn around right away. I already knew. "You don't need the road anymore," a voice said. It didn't come from one direction. It came from the space between thoughts. "You learned," it continued. "You observed. You understood." I turned. There was no single shape, just a distortion in the air, a presence outlined by borrowed features, a suggestion of height, of posture, of intention. "You wear your face well," it said, "better than most." My chest tightened. "What do you want?" It considered the question. To leave and to stay. The contradiction made sense immediately. "You can't go far like this," I said. "You need anchors." It didn't deny it. "I offered faces," I continued. "The town did. That's the agreement." "Yes," it said, "but faces decay. They forget." Understanding settled in slowly, like cold. "You want memory," I said, "continuity." It moved closer, not physically, conceptually. "You remember," it said, "even when you don't want to." I thought of my father, of Daniel, of the road feeling familiar the first time I heard its name. "You don't want me to disappear," I said. "You want me to come back." "To return," it corrected, "not to remain." I laughed quietly. "So I become like them?" "No," it said, "you become the reason." The truth landed hard. I wasn't being hollowed out. I was being prepared. "You'll leave," it said. "You'll go farther than any of us ever have. You'll tell stories. You'll look for places like this. And everywhere you go, the road will understand how to follow." The circle behind me shifted, not closer, more attentive. "And if I refuse?" I asked. For the first time, the thing hesitated. "You already didn't," it said. I realized then what it had taken from me on my first drive. Not fear, not memory, choice. The calm I'd felt wasn't peace, it was alignment. I don't remember driving home. I remember waking up in my bed the next morning, sunlight coming through the window like nothing had ever been wrong. The town was normal again. People waved, Cars passed, birds returned. Daniel was gone, Linda was gone, no mention of them anywhere. It was like they'd been erased gently, without resistance. I packed my bags that week. No one tried to stop me. That should have warned me. I'd been on the road ever since. Different towns, different highways, different names. And everywhere I go, I find places like Old Briar Road, places where people come back wrong, places that recognize me. Sometimes late at night, when the road stretches too long and the trees lean in just a little too close, I feel that calm again. And I know everyone who left that road came back different. I just came back useful.
Some places don't haunt you because they're evil. They haunt you because they're unfinished. And sometimes the worst thing a place can do is let you leave. If this story stayed with you longer than it should have, like this video and subscribe to Death ReHaunt. And tell me in the comments, do you think some roads change people? Or do they just reveal what was always waiting to come out? Because once you notice the difference, you never stop seeing it.